Greetings! This is another edition of The Spectre, and this is D.S. Yoxheimer. This is the final retrospective of the Next Generation Star Trek films, feature films. Some of them, well, one of them at least is kind of a feature film. This one is better than the last. It's better than Insurrection, even though it did very, very poorly at the box office. It cost about $60 million to make and only made like $67 million. So 2002 was a low point for the Star Trek franchise. I think Enterprise was on TV and that wasn't doing well. I barely watched it. I like a lot of the shows, but it's not one of the ones I watch it sometimes on Amazon. I catch up with it. Some of them are good, but anyway, moving right along. Star Trek Nemesis is a plot that involves the Romulans. So it's a little darker. In the beginning of the movie, of course, I've got to touch upon a few things here. This is one of the only movies, Next Generation feature films, that has Wesley Crusher in it. Will Wheaton's in it. Not one line. He's at Deanna Troy's and William Riker's wedding. So, no lines at all. We hear Data sing Blue Skies and all that stuff. Some Irving Berlin, and there's a lot of other annoying chatter, but they never brought him back. I mean, he was an actor who was in Stand By Me, and they didn't feature him in that. So there's a group photo here. So, the heart of the plot of Star Trek Nemesis is, Picard has a nemesis. Data does too. Unfortunately, it's not lore. It's an android named B4, which I'll tell you about the introduction of him in a bit. So anyway, Admiral Janeway. This is after Janeway came back from after post Voyager, basically. So she makes a cameo. What's her? I can't believe I can't remember her name. She's on Orange Is the New Black now. But anyway, I can't believe that I drew a blank there. So anyway, Admiral Janeway says that you have to meet with the Shizon, who turns out is a maid from from Captain Picard, whatever. They cloned him from a hair follicle or skin cell or whatever. But the cloning process made him age further, or age faster, more rapidly. When you meet him, he's like a much younger version of Picard. It's actually played by Tom Hardy, who plays Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, which I didn't even know. He's much more slender, or less bulky, and he, of course, doesn't have that big, mouthpiece. Everybody's walking around looking like that, kind of like now, with their face masks. So, anyway, but he's a pretty cool villain. It could have been done better. I mean, it was pretty good. It was at least I like watching this movie. I'm enjoying this. When I went to see it in theaters, I liked it. I think the Insurrection hurt this film. That's why no one bothered to go see it. It's understandable. There was going to actually be a final Next Generation movie, but that was scrapped, and they did the reboot, which actually was much better, and they did that 6 or 7 years later, in 2009, I think. And so, yeah, that's basically what happened. But technically, there is a comic book that connects the dots, or there's a timeline where well, you know what I mean. You know what happens if you've seen this movie. B4, Data uploads himself onto B4, and I'll describe later what happens with Data, but you know what I mean. Basically, it's supposed to connect with the 2009 movie with Chris Pine. Chris Pine. And so anyway, this is all over the fucking place. I'm getting all over the place on this one. Sorry about that. So, Anyway, they meet with this guy, and he's on this wicked awesome ship. It's called the Shizon. It looks like a huge kind of spiderish, like it's bigger than the Enterprise. It's more powerful. It's like fucking bitchin'. They always sometimes seem to be at a tactical disadvantage on Star Trek. It's like the other, like the Romulans and the Klingons have the cloaking devices, and they didn't agree to that treaty. So why does the Federation say, "Oh no, we're not going to use cloaking devices"? And anytime someone did on the series or came up with some other thing, like, you know, some kind of phase thing that makes them go through, you know, a ship go through like a solid object, like an asteroid or whatever, which would be really cool. You're like, no man, it actually happened. That's an episode involving Commander Riker. But with that said, it's just, anyway, it's ridiculous. Just, you know, nut up and get a cloaking device. So they've had him for how long, man? Been around. So, anyway, how they find B4 is they find this signal, which was basically a trail of breadcrumbs left for them to find that's similar to Data's positronic brain signature. They find B4 in pieces on this planet, which is sort of like a Mad Max planet. And they arrive in sort of this off-road vehicle that came off the shuttlecraft that they took. And so it's pretty Mad Max. Worf's like got a rear gun turret and they're shooting and stuff like that. And they, which was also kind of a cool scene, you know. Never really seen that in a Star Trek movie. Thought it was a nice little. And so they bring back the less sophisticated android, which was also built by Dr. Soong. As I mentioned, I thought it'd be cooler if they brought in Data, not Data, I mean Lore. Lore was deactivated and dismantled, but he could have been put back together if he was found or whatever. They just basically made this one up, you know, that you never heard of this android before at all. So everything's, you know, kind of possible, of course. In any case, here's Data and B4. So, what basically happens here, it's pretty basic plot. It's not too complicated to follow, but essentially I've been complicated here. I think a bit more talking about other shit in the Star Trek verse. But they of course are trying to stop this because Shizon has this crazy weapon that's going to destroy this planet. He's heading this group of a slave race that they're called the Romulans. Shizon, the Remans, which is a slave race they had working on this planet, and I don't know how, they never explain exactly how Shizon was created, but the process by which he was created basically gave him this advanced sort of aging disease or whatever was happening to him. He sort of these veiny, you know, it started happening around his head, and he was just, it was kind of like that was what was going on, and he needed a blood transfusion or something from Picard, which I don't know if that's just a blood transfusion or replacing all his blood, or if he just needed him periodically to get a blood transfusion to live. Who knows? But it was war. So he's kind of this, he's sort of like Khan in Wrath of Khan. His ship was cloaked, and it's, you know, much more armament than the Enterprise. So the Enterprise gets pretty fucked up, obviously, and they wind up, he just, you know, like rams it. You know, Picard just, that's what they do. They decide they're going to ram the ship. And then he backs out, and like the ships are both pretty much crippled pretty badly, and Picard eventually transports over, and before Data switches places with B4, and they think B4 took Picard over there because B4 was being used by Shizan to infiltrate the Enterprise, and basically they double-crossed him and all that. So he flew a small fighter craft out of there, and they beamed the fighter craft onto the Enterprise, and then they had to go back over to stop this big weapon that was going to destroy this planet, and you know. So here's where we get to the sad part of the story. You know, Data goes with him. No. Data gets teleported over there, but he couldn't teleport off. I think that's what happened. No, this is what happened. Since the ship's all ripped open and stuff like that, Geordi helped Data jump over to the other ship because opening up the force fields where the ship's hull was breached. And he goes over there, and then he... I did see this movie recently. I watched all these movies within the last, 2 weeks. Okay, so believe me. So he goes over there, and then earlier Geordi had come up with this single transporter. I don't know why you would just come up with a transporter. It's like, oh, well, why don't you just, I don't know, make 2 of them or something, you know? But he just only had 1. Sorry, only had time to rig 1 up. So Geordi's conveniently tragic. It creates this conveniently tragic situation. And so Data and Picard fight Shizor. He gets impaled, or Shizan, and everything. And he's basically, Data takes the single transporter little device and slaps it on Picard. He disappears, and Data stays behind and shoots some phaser, I think, into the weapon to stop it or defuse it, and the ship blows up and Data dies. So that's the big thing, they get back and they're all having kind of a sad, they're remembering Data and all this stuff like that. I don't know if they think of Data the same way that they think of a person dying. I mean, it was obviously, they had a relationship with him for quite a long time, and he's done a lot for them. He's risked his life for everybody on the ship, even though he's sentient, but he has an emotion chip that at some points in the movie trilogy can be removed or turned off, or so whatever they feel like doing. So but yeah, it's a decent movie and everything like that. I mean, the Shizan was cool. I mean, look at it compared to the Enterprise right here. I can't say a lot of horror. I mean, you could say a lot of criticisms about it. I criticized the last movie pretty bad. I think this movie was hurt by the last movie. It was a decent Star Trek flick to, in 2002 to just go check out if you're a Star Trek fan. Certainly wasn't the greatest or anything. The new reboot movie in 2009, much better. It was, but I think it was just because this, it was a little, it could have been a better story and everything like that. It could have been beefed up a bit in terms of that and been more interesting. I think they learned their lessons with the new TV series Discovery. I really like that. And I like the Picard series. Pretty cool. I dig it. I think it's really cool. So that's pretty much what I'd have to say about it. I think the in in retrospect, they sort of did learn their lessons with what not to do, and with the I think the new TV series and the two series that are currently airing now, they realized, oh, we don't have to be afraid to let it be Star Trek, and we can make it cool, and we can let these people be human beings too, and I think that's what they've done with the new Star Trek TV series. But anyway, I guess that's probably a good a good summarization of how I feel about it and these films. Of course, First Contact was the best of them. Even though even though it did hold up pretty well, considering it was like 1996, I think. So yeah, yeah, you do have to keep in mind these movies are very difficult to make. They're high, special effects films, and you're dealing with studios and stuff like that. You can't just go in there with cool ideas and expect them to come to fruition on the screen all the time. There's a lot of compromises being made, and unfortunately. So, with that said, this is D.S. Yoxheimer. This has been another edition of The Spectre, and I think it's time for me to energize. One to beam up.